Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today is a very special episode. We are announcing Melissa Hughes as an upcoming author in one of our upcoming Mission Matters books. Melissa is a speaker, author, and neuroscience geek over at the Andrick Group. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to have you on the show. When I heard you're a neuroscience geek, first off, I'm a wannabe. I wish I was more of a neuroscience geek, but I know just enough to act like I think I know what I'm talking about. But today we're going to get some real insight from you. So excited to get into your background and what you do, and also, of course, the upcoming book. But before we do that, we will start this episode the way that we start them all, with our Mission Matters Minute. So Melissa, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Melissa, what mission matters to you?
So my mission is understanding how the brain works and how the brain quirks to make it work better, because I think that there's a neuroscience geek in all of us. I think we all want to know how to make our brain work better so that we can be happier and smarter and actually really thrive.
Awesome. Where did all this begin for you? Where did you kind of go on this path to where you're like, neuroscience, like this is what I want to spend my life in? Where did that start for you?
Right. So I started my career in a fourth grade classroom. And at the end of my first year, I sat down with my mentor and we kind of did a postmortem. What worked really well? What do you want to work on over the summer and come back even better in the fall? And my overarching question was, how can I actually be the best teacher I can be if I have no idea how the brain learns? Yeah. And all of those factors that impact creativity and problem solving and innovation and all the stuff, right? That we want our kids to hang out in those spaces and just be brilliant. That was kind of the very beginning of it. I remember that very first year was the first year for the Ohio Proficiency Test. And it was that big standardized test. And, for months we drilled test taking skills and we talked to the kids about, answer the ones you know first and then come back and read the directions.
I feel like a lot of people that are watching this, Melissa, you're taking them back to childhood right now. I swear to you right now, I feel like I was in fifth grade just this moment. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, so we spend all this time and then we give them that very important test. And then we tell them, now go in there, do your very best. We've completely stressed them out. Like we've droned on and on and on about how like this is going to make or break their lives. They're not going to go to Harvard if they don't pass this fourth grade test, right? And what I have learned since then is the brain it's just impossible for the brain to operate at its best when we're stressed or scared or are experiencing anxiety. And so that was kind of the very beginning of the journey. And as I moved along and learned more and more and had more and more conversations, what I learned was understanding what's happening in the brain is actually more important once we leave the classroom. Because as we all know now, that fourth grade test means absolutely nothing to what we do in our everyday lives. Yeah. But we use our brains every day in our everyday lives. So that's kind of where it all started.
It's interesting too that we think about some of these early moments in early times. And so I told you I had a little story to share on this one, and it's a true story. So growing up, my parents and my mom's fine with me sharing this, but she said, we always had this thing in our household. My mom's like, oh, I hate math. I'm terrible with numbers. Which she was a social worker for many, many years before she retired. And she was more of a talker, so to speak, and more in tune with that side of what she liked to do. But she always said, from a pretty young age, I remember her saying like, oh, I'm just not good at math. I'm not good at math. And she kind of like, inadvertently, like I took that into like my mind, like, oh, well, it's in our genes. We're just not good at math. Yeah. And I really just kind of internalized this through the years. And a little bit later in my life, when I start getting into a little bit around the college, things like that, like neuroplasticity and things like this. And I learn about this concept and I start thinking about it. I'm like, wait a minute, I can learn math. This is crazy. Like this is all just made up stuff that I just didn't know how my brain worked. I didn't know that I had the ability to learn and just do some other things. And it's funny because then I ended up pursuing a career in finance and all I did was deal with math most of my day. So like just by not understanding how the brain worked, I literally remember I learned how to use a financial calculator in like a weekend. It took me like 20 hours and all of a sudden I was really proficient. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm actually pretty good at math. Thanks, Mom. And again, she lets me share that story, but I feel like so many of us could benefit from, and it doesn't have to be math. It could be a lot of other things like these hang-ups and these things that we have going on just because we don't really understand how our brain operates.
It's so true. And, we in the education space, we've known a long time about growth mindset and kids who say, I'm not creative, or I'm not mathematically inclined, or I'm not good at science, or whatever. What we have learned since then. So Carol Dweck is the big mindset guru, and she started in education. But what we've learned since then is that organizations have a mindset too. And, your organization can have a genius mindset. Think Enron. You have to be the smartest guy in the room. And so when you have a genius mindset like that, what happens is some of the best ideas never get shared because what if it's not a good idea? What if I'm not the smartest guy in the room? So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut and fly under the radar. And so collaboration goes down, cooperation goes down. People are not sharing ideas. Where in a growth mindset organization where it's all about, hey, what can I teach? What can I learn? Well, now people are not afraid of making mistakes because in that organization, we learn from mistakes, although no one likes to shine a light on the mistakes they make. But yeah, so it's interesting. And I think we all have that thing where we go, oh, I am not at all X, whatever that is, creative, mathematic, whatever, right?
Oh, it's great. But I want to jump around a little bit here. We're definitely going to get into the Andric group and what you're doing there, but I want to spend a little bit of time on the book, and I'll preface this before I ask the question. So for the audience, do not worry. We will be bringing Melissa back on the line when the book is actually live, and we'll do a deep dive into her writing. But today we just want to get a little bit of a feel for what's going to be in the upcoming book. So tell us a little bit more about what you plan to contribute, Melissa.
So one of the things that I've really learned in my conversations with people about neuroscience, and when you tell people what you do, they kind of go, "Oh, that's exciting." But then when you really get into the meat of it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I kind of want to know how to do that," because 20 years ago was all about hiring the best and the brightest, and now not so much. We all have the same access to information, right? Technology has put us all kind of at an even playing field. So really what separates the best of us from the rest of us are, what is it about this team that really makes them thrive together? And it isn't that is a team of all-stars. It is a team that is able to operate like all-stars, like an all-star team. So part of understanding how to get your team to operate at optimum efficiency and to really do great things is to understand key drivers to human motivation. Like what motivates us? And again, all things being equal, we all need to be able to pay our bills. We all need to be able to work in a safe space. But beyond that, what is it that drives people to go, man, I love my job. I can't wait to get in there and do that thing, right? Because we know those people that are just in love with their jobs. And they're the brand evangelist. And so what is it that creates those conditions internally? So some of what I talk about in the book is those key drivers to human motivation. And spoiler alert, it's not about salary, and it's not about a foosball table in the break room and, Frisbee Fridays. It's none of those things, but it's really about, what we've learned from social scientists and neuroscientists and psychologists over the last 20, 30 years about, when we feel like what we do really matters, we want to do it more. And we've just been through the pandemic, right? So one of the big questions in the pandemic, especially I do a lot of work in hospitality. And one of the questions in hospitality was, gosh, these guys are really hurting. Hospitality got hit hard by the pandemic. How can I help my people? What can I do? And my answer was always, well, science says, let them contribute more. And it seems counterintuitive, but if you want people to feel like bring their stress level down, the best way to do that is to enable them to make greater contributions to the organization. So things like that. It's that human just drivers to, what drives us to excel, what drives us to be a cohesive team, what drives us to want to contribute more. So it's fun stuff.
I have about 50 questions I want to ask on what you just said, but we're going to stop on that topic right now. And I will get all those questions in when the book is live and we'll do a deep dive there. But speaking of books, let's get into some of the books that you already have live. I'll have to tell you, I ordered my gratitude journal and I've been working through it and it's amazing. And I love the cover. So Happy Hour with Einstein. I'm like, okay, I like Happy Hour like Einstein. I was in. So when I got the book and I saw the graphics graphics on the inside. I have the gratitude journal version, by the way. I saw the graphics, I saw the inside and the way it walks you through. Let's just start at the beginning. How did you come up with this idea and this brand? Because I think it's amazing.
So have you ever sat down on an airplane next to someone and you start that like small talk? So coming or going? What do you do? You know, I was the girl who would still be talking when we touched down in Dallas, right? So like, I am just super passionate about being able to share what I've learned. And I find learning about the brain just absolutely fascinating. And the more conversations I had, the more I realized that I'm not unique in that. Like people really are pretty interested in that amazing 3-pound squishy gray thing between our ears, right? So had a conversation with someone and said, you know, you should really write a book. Like that's really good stuff, because what I learned is I actually am a geek and I actually do like the research and the multiple regression studies. And I like to look at all the data and all of that. Most people do not, but we all like to know the so what part. And so what I learned very early on is if I can share the so what part, like they'll be bored to death at the how we got there, but they actually do want to know the bottom line. So Happy Hour with Einstein was kind of that bottom line. And it was meant to be, you know, just for the people who don't care about the science, but do care about the why, you know, what at the end of the day. And after I wrote that book and I put the gratitude journal in the book, and I got a lot of feedback that was like, hey, I loved it. But then like you teased me, like I got to the end of the chapter and I was like, wait, what? There's no more? Like what about X, Y, and Z? So they said, you need to write another one. So my second book was Happier Hour with Einstein, another round, obviously.
Of course.
And what I did was I took the gratitude journal out and made that a separate piece. And the gratitude journal is just so fun understanding, you know, it incorporates color and abstract art.
I wasn't expecting that piece when I got it. Like that was one of the things I was like, oh, it's beautifully designed as well. Like not all, you know, journals are, but I was thinking about it like, of course you would do that because the idea is you're trying to spark that creativity or that feeling out of the participant, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the way the journal is set up, it's kind of bookends your day with gratitude. Like if you start the day with, if I envision the perfect day today, this is what it looks like. So there's a thing in the brain called the reticular activating system, and I call it the brain's bouncer. And if you tell the brain what's important to you, then the brain will let that information in. The brain actually processes about 11 million bits of information per second, but we are only consciously aware of about 40. So how does the brain decide which 40 that we get to actually experience consciously? And it has everything to do with the RAS or the bouncer. And so if you envision this day that you want to have, or this goal that you want to achieve, or this presentation that you're just absolutely going to nail, the bouncer lets in all of the information that's really relevant to that perspective. But conversely, if we get up in the morning and we think, and this is going to be like the worst day ever, well, then the bouncer is going to find all the reasons why it's the worst day ever. It's crazy how it works, but it works. And then at the end of the day, looking back and saying, these are all the good things that happened, because I think we're often very hard on ourselves and we have a very long list of to-dos. And if we don't get all those to-dos done, we feel like we were not a success. But looking back at the end of the day and going, yeah, you know, I did do some pretty cool things. And sometimes they're not even things that were on your list. Sometimes it's you made someoe's day, you know, or you helped another person or whatever. So yeah, that was fun. The gratitude journal was very, very much of a labor of love for me.
And so I told you I had another story for you. So all of this, everything you see in front of it, the very first show that I ever hosted that I did, I don't even know if I can call it a show, honestly. This is way back when, and you know, when Periscope first came out, it was one of the first streaming things that were easy. And I had something that I called the Gratitude Show. And every single day, and it was kind of like a two-sided thing where people can watch you and, you know, they can watch what you're doing to refresh the memories of people that have never used Periscope, but they can watch what you're doing and then they can chat. Like they can put in chat and other things. So all I would do, Melissa, it was so much fun and it was hilarious. All I would do is I literally just turn on the streaming app on my phone and I would just ask people what they were grateful for. And I would tell them what I'm grateful for. So it was more like a gratitude roll call, if you will. But the amazing thing is that people from all around the world started watching it. And I would get these amazing stories about things that people were grateful for and that they would share in their lives. I still remember one woman, she was was in, I think, Saudi Arabia. And one day she says, and she'd come on there all the time because you'd see it, there'd be like all these people, but you'd see them comment. And one day she says she's grateful that today she got like her degree. And she was one of the first, if not the first women to get like, because they were just opening up some of the educational opportunities. So she was one of the first women to get a degree in engineering, for software engineering specifically, like in the entire country. Wow. And I was like, wow. And so you'd hear these like amazing, powerful stories. And so that's how all of this started. Mission Matters, everything. It started. And I was scared stiff. I couldn't even ask a question, Melissa, on a camera or anything. All I could do was just ask them, hey, what are you grateful for? And read it off the screen. And then I would share what I was grateful for. And every day we just reconvene. And I just do it consistently. I probably did, I don't know, 400 shows, 300 or something like that shows, just every day getting on there and telling people what we're grateful for. So I'm a big proponent and a fan of starting your day. And I've never done the ending the day side of things other than now that I've been introduced to your journal. And I didn't know, I knew a little bit, but I didn't know how the bouncer worked exactly. Remember, I'm a novice here. So now I guess for some people that are watching that maybe thought that we often hear on one side of the, coin is I think what we get a lot on is that maybe not the science side of it. And it's like, well, attract energy and some other things. And maybe people think it's kind of like, whether you believe it or not, whether the science is behind it about starting your day with gratitude, but you're telling us the very specific reason why, because we need to program the bouncer, right?
Absolutely. And here's one more thing. As you were, bringing gratitude to all those people in those 400 and some shows, we now have studies that show expressing gratitude to another person, they're going to feel good. But actually, you get a bigger boost neurologically than the receiver does, the giver does. So I know, crazy, right? But they did these studies, and so
bringing the gratitude show back. Fine.
They measured baseline happiness of all these people, and then they had them write down a note of gratitude to someone that was really important to them or someone that they were really grateful for. And then there were like kind of three groups. That one group, that was the end of it. The next group, they actually picked up the phone and called that person and told them, read the note or whatever. And then the next group was a face-to-face. Hey, I want to tell you how grateful I am for you because you XYZ. And the people that expressed gratitude to another person, the biggest gains came from the people who were the least happy. Wow. So what that means is on your worst day, the best thing you can do is go say thank you to someone else. You will benefit more from that. Like now you're going to make somebody else's day. Your happiness is going to increase just because you have expressed gratitude to someone else.
So good. So good. I want to shift focus here slightly because I know you and I get going all day long. The Andrick Group. Tell us a little bit more about your firm, how you're helping organizations and people.
So, when I first started, it was really educationally focused. It was I went back to my roots, and it was let's go into schools and let's help teachers understand this whole concept of whole brain teaching and learning. And there are some programs out there that are called whole brain. And I don't mean it in a commercial sense, but really whole brain just meaning engaging as many regions of the brain as possible for greater neural connectivity, because then you have deeper cognition, you have greater mental acuity, and you have better recall. You're actually able to put that in your memory bank easier. The more I did that, the more I realized, wow, there are people in the business world who are really kind of jazzed about this. So I shifted focus and I went into the business world. And so now we go in and talk about employee engagement and company culture and how to apply neuroscience and brain-based research to improve your company culture and improve employee engagement. So a lot of people talk about that, but not from a neuroscience perspective. So I'm able to provide that unique perspective for some folks who are not quite so touchy-feely about making their people happy. I can say, here's the science. You want to hear the science? Because science says this is why you should.
Oh, it's not fair. It's not fair, Melissa, because you have both sides. It's not fair for people. You can give them the science and the charisma. So they're not expecting you.
So it's been fun. I mean, honestly, we do consulting. I do a lot of keynotes. It's just amazing because I believe everybody really is pretty interested in how the brain works. and how to make it work better so that you're happier, so that you're more productive, so that you're, fill in the blank, whatever your goal is. The brain just works better when you're in a positive state than in negative or neutral, period. The brain just works better. So how do you apply that then to your workplace or your relationships or, whatever it is? So, and even in challenges, I mean, there's science to what is the right challenge, because when someone is really optimistic and feels like they are in a psychologically safe environment and they belong to a tribe, well, then obstacles become challenges. It's like, oh yeah, bring that on. Like I can do that, right? Yeah. But when you're not in a psychologically safe environment, then those obstacles are barriers. Those obstacles are kind of like, I can't get past that. That's an organizational thing that is not going to enable me to be successful. So when you can actually apply this kind of science to, how do you create the kind of challenges that are going to energize your people instead of frustrate, right? Too easy, it's boring. I'm going to give up because I lost interest. Too hard, it's frustrating. I'm going to give up because why? See, finding that sweet spot of good challenges, because the brain actually loves challenge.
And it's interesting that you mentioned this, because we hear in the news all the time, right? Retention, or people don't stay with organizations, or people don't, like all these different things. And so it's interesting to me because it seems as though like all these little things can help with some really like serious, I shouldn't say little things, but all of these components and these education pieces can help with, serious things like retention and otherwise, because if you're able to understand like how the brain works, and then that helps you kind of connect that with how to create the right workplace environment, which you just gave us a great example of.
Yeah, if you do look at any of the research around the Great Resignation. So there was a 2022, just this year, Gallup poll that talked about the Great Resignation and why are these people quitting? And because I don't feel like my work is respected. Well, that's really simple. That's a really simple thing to fix. If you think about the team that you have, and according to the statistics out there, only a third of our workforce is actively engaged. So to put that in different terms, that's like being a baseball coach and only playing the game with the pitcher, the catcher, and the center fielder and still expecting to win, right?
It'd be ridiculous. Yeah.
It's ridiculous, right? And so you think, well, how can I engage these folks? Well, if many people are quitting or many people are disengaged because they don't feel like what they do matters, maybe you could tell them why their role is important. Like maybe they're just doing that little tiny widget, but without that little tiny widget, the whole thing doesn't work. So, how do you communicate that role is really important, that every role in the organization is important, because we need everyone on the team to be a thriving team. So, things like that, like when you really kind of get down to it, it's like, really pretty simple.
So I know one of your big focuses that you mentioned and that we've spoken about previously is hospitality, like everything from the science of the menu, like to other things, and guest experience and all those things that make, the difference between a great hospitality experience and something that's okay. And maybe you don't frequent that restaurant or that hotel or that place. Tell us a little bit more about the focus and kind of why you chose this niche.
So I love to work in hospitality. First of all, hospitality folks are just wicked fun. They are just fun people, and life is about, I love working with fun people. So I've been really, really fortunate to be able to work with some great people in the hospitality industry. I think, one of the things that I've learned, and we know that 90% presentation, right? Yeah. So we know that. But what you might not know is how much the brain actually creates the experience of the meal long before the food hits your tongue. It happens from the moment you walk in the door. Is it too dark? Is it too light? Is the music too loud? Is the hostess frowning or smiling? And so there are so many things that actually create that experience or the expectation of the experience before you ever get that food. And anyone in hospitality will tell you it's about expectations. So, if you expect to get, on a scale of 1 to 10, if you expect to get a 5 burger and you get a 5 burger, then you're okay. Yeah. You're satisfied because that met your expectations. But if you expect to get a 10 burger, and you get a 5 burger, now you're irritated because your expectations were not met. And so I think understanding how the brain creates those expectations and your perceptions and all of the factors that contribute to those perceptions. So everything from the weight of the menu, the color of the tablecloth, the order of things on your menu. I just worked with a restaurant group down here in Florida, and they completely redesigned the menu. And they're like, yeah, we wanted to really put the items that had the highest, the best margins strategically placed. And they're already seeing that those items are selling more. And they haven't changed anything about the recipe or the ingredients or any of that. It's fascinating how the brain works and quirks.
Oh, it is. And as you're saying this, I'm reminded, like, every time I go into, like, I don't know, a Morton's or something, I get a steak. They always have that, like, classic. They have a certain type of music playing all the time, like your old Frank Sinatra or something else. And I just feel like I'm in that mood, and I'm going to get this classic, like, steak experience versus maybe when I go to somewhere that's like kind of like new age or something different. And maybe they, could be the similar steak flavor, whatever, everything else, but it's brighter. It has a different feel. There's a different music playing. There's different things. And I always feel like if I want like a classic steak, or if I want that certain thing, that I'm going to a place like Morton's. If I want something else, then it, still want steak, then I'll be going somewhere else. But then I'm thinking, Morton's isn't the spot. And a lot of that is because I already made a decision. But now that I think about it, as you're saying this, I'm like, have I ever really just compared the flavor or the taste of the steak? I don't know if I could do that.
They've done studies where they serve the exact same meal in kind of a cafeteria style environment. And then one that has, the linens and the china and all the rest. And the meal, people perceive the meal to taste completely different because of the surroundings. And taste is the weakest sense. All the other senses are much stronger than taste, which is why, presentation is everything. And it's why restaurateurs and hoteliers spend a lot of money on design and decor, because it's so important and it contributes to the experience.
Well, Melissa, I didn't expect I'd begin so hungry during this interview, but I did. I also, I do want to bring up one final point though, because I know you do a lot of speaking and just public engagements and public events. Like, tell us a little bit more about kind of some of the material and things that you present to organizations when you're on the road.
So my goal is always to make it as relevant as possible. So, I always start with a conversation like, what's your pain point right now? Or what's your focus? Like, what are you really trying to get better at? And sometimes it's psychological safety. I've done a lot of that lately since the pandemic. That's become a pretty popular topic, but also just how to keep employees engaged. And in the hospitality space, it's how to create an exceptional guest experience, but also how to create an exceptional employee experience. Because as in other industries, training and replacing and training new employees and that constant churn of turnover is expensive. So I do a lot with that and company culture. A lot of times I have a blog, and so somebody will see something on my blog and say, hey, I want you to come talk about that to our organization, which is good. So yeah.
Oh, that's great. I'll tell you, it's been great having you on our show today. And I do want to give you the opportunity to leave any website, or like, how do people pick up your book other than going to Amazon? That's how I got it. I mean, how do people connect, follow your work overall, and follow up?
They can get the book on Amazon. It's also available on my website. My website is melissahughes.rocks, ROCKS. And also I deliver a Neuro Nugget every Friday. So if you want to get a little smarter every week and impress your friends over the weekend with your new smarts, I send it out every Friday. And it's typically a 3 to 5 minute video with an associated blog post. I don't do anything else with that website. I'm actually a terrible salesperson, so you won't get like all kinds of salesy stuff from me, but that's the best way to just keep up. I've actually really enjoyed connecting with people through the Neuro Nugget.
Fantastic. And we'll put all that information in the show notes so that our audience can just click on the link and head right on over. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters or engaging in an episode or listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you're listening, we're all about bringing on entrepreneurs, executives, and experts and having them share their mission, the reason behind their mission, Also how they're doing what they're doing, and what do we all learn and gain from that? Like, how can we all grow together? If that's the type of content that you're into or sounds interesting or inspiring, hit that subscribe button, because we have many more mission-based individuals coming up on the line, and we don't want you to miss a thing. And Melissa, really, it has been a pleasure. I can't wait till we do our next interview, where we'll do a deep dive into the writing that you're going to do for the upcoming Mission Matters book. So thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.